edge and be like, Amber, what if you're this close? What if you're this close? You're really going to give up now? After 15, 16, 17 years of working for this, you're going to give up now? For what? You know, like, I really just couldn't see myself doing anything else. And I was like, I have to make this work. But it was the first time I ever said that I was done racing. Like, I fully said to my parents and my fiance, I said, I'm done racing. And that lasted one day. I'm doing everything I can outside of the track to make sure that I'm ready when I'm at the track. I've worked 8 years for this moment, 8 years. I love being underestimated. Like, I love it. Like, I love when people look at me and I can tell they're like, oh, okay. Like, and I'm like, all right, watch me. Like, I love it. I think it's the best. And like, me as a driver and an athlete, I want to win more than anything. So I put more pressure on myself to win and do well than anyone else does around me.
All right, ready to go?
She's going to call Lightning McQueen out.
Welcome back to the #1 podcast in Winnipeg, a.k.a. Tool for a Rise, where we document the rise and stardom of Winnipeg's talent and personalities. Hit the subscribe button. Get us to 1,000 subscribers. Keep showing us love. Happy New Year. And let's get into this one. You're going to like this one.
2022 is on to a great start. Let's bring on our guest for today. She's the first Canadian female to ever win a NASCAR sanctioned race in the United States. She's a motivational speaker. She's an entrepreneur. Please welcome Amber Balcaen.
Let's go. Huge studio crowd.
Yeah, but kind of really, because there's like 10 of you in here. So.
Yep. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks
we
for having
appreciate
me.
you here. We're going to start off with you can give yourself an intro as well. Let the people know who you are. We know a little bit about you, but let the people know what you are about and who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my name's Amber Balcaen. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I currently live in the States now. That's where I had to move for racing. NASCAR capital is North Carolina, so that's where I'm located. But this will be my 20th year of racing, which sounds crazy to say, makes me feel old, but I'm also super grateful and super thankful that I've been able to race for this long. So excited to see what kind of questions you guys got for me today.
Yeah, of course. Like 20 years of experience in the NASCAR, right? It's like crazy, half your life pretty much. Where did that start for you?
Yeah, so I actually started locally racing dirt. So I started in go-karts. I actually mainly raced in North Dakota and Minnesota. And then I moved up to what are called lightning sprints, or some people know them as mini sprints. And I raced locally here at Red River Co-op Speedway, just outside of Winnipeg, and was winning quite a few races and kind of caught the eye of some people in the States and started racing a 410 sprint car, which is a larger sprint car down in the States, and was doing really well and caught the eye of the NASCAR Diversity Combine. And being from Winnipeg, you know, NASCAR isn't something that is overly popular here, something that I thought that I could even achieve. All my whole family races, but they all race dirt, and they have a regular 9-to-5 job and race as a hobby on weekends. And that's kind of, you know, how I thought it was going to be too. I went to Red River College and got my business administration 2-year thing there, and then I went to the University of Manitoba to get the 4-year program, and I was just sitting in class one day, and I was just, all I do is daydream about racing and being in the States and you know, living this dream. And I finally had my aha moment when I was sitting in class, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't want to be here. Like, I want to be racing. And so that day I went home to my parents and I said, I'm dropping out of university, and I'm going to try to become a professional race car driver and really do this as my career. And that was when I was 21. I'm 29 now. So a lot has happened through then. It's been a really, really difficult journey. My parents said, you know, this is gonna be really hard, and I had no idea how actual tough it was gonna be. And racing, especially NASCAR, requires a lot of funding, a lot of financial backing, and that's something my parents weren't able to give me, and so that made it a lot more difficult. But they always morally supported me, and that's all I needed.
Yeah, I'm sure you get this question a lot, but how did you, as a young kid, when you're at the races, or what was your dream when your dream was to be a race car driver at younger, but what was the environment like when you were younger, like young I'm talking?
Yeah, so I grew up all surrounded around racing. Like, I was in my mom's belly at the racetrack. So like I watched my dad race my whole life, and you know, I missed out on a lot of birthdays and a lot of like school events, and because I rather just go racing with my parents and watch my dad race. And even when I was racing go-karts, the races were on Wednesdays, so I'd go out to, you know, take Wednesday afternoon off and drive to Grand Forks and race. And it's always what I wanted to do. It's not that my parents pushed me into it. I actually had to beg my dad to let me race. And my mom finally said, you know, my dad didn't let me race because I was a girl, and like, we can't do that to our daughter. So that's how that started. And I always knew I wanted to race. All my cousins raced, and my dad, my uncle, my grandfather, and it's just been my whole life. And I knew that I wanted to race, but you know, at 9 years old, I didn't know if I was gonna be good at it or not. And my first race, I think I got second. My second race, I won. So I'm like, all right, we got something here.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it so much that I just knew I wanted to race as long as possible. My ultimate dream when I was young was to race a 410 sprint car, and I achieved that when I was 21. And so now looking back to see what my goals are, and every time I reach a goal, you move the pedestal, and now it's this goal, and then you reach that goal, you move it farther. So if you told 10-year-old Amber like you're going to be racing at Daytona one day, I'd be like, no freaking way, you know.
That's
but
insane.
yeah.
I mean, you're living every kid's dream, right? Like you speak to like a 10-year-old kid. Yes, I want to be a race car driver. What is that like?
I mean, it sounds cool, and like, don't get me wrong, like being in a race car is awesome, and like, I'm addicted to adrenaline. I love going fast. The feeling you get in a car is like no other. Like, you're completely out of reality. You're so focused on hitting your marks and passing that car in front of you that you're like in a whole other world. And I think that's what I'm so addicted to, is like that feeling of you're not thinking about anything else. You're just so focused and in the moment. Like, you truly get to feel what it's like to be in the moment when you're in a race car. And that is one of my favorite parts of it. And, you know, I've had a lot of struggles throughout my career, and there's a lot of years I didn't have sponsorship, and I didn't know how I was going to get it, and you know, a lot of mental toughness was required for sure. But I knew that the thing that kept me going was the belief in my potential, and also knowing that if I can do this and show people, you know, you don't need all the tools in the toolbox to build the life of your dreams. You just got to work really hard, be super disciplined and consistent, and just keep pushing forward. And if a girl from Winnipeg with no financial backing, who's in a male dominated sport, an American sport, and a Canadian, like, if she can do that, then I can do anything. So that's been my biggest motivation, is just showing people, like, you don't need to, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who you are. Like, if you put in the work, you can make your dreams come true.
That's very powerful. That's very powerful. And I think that applies to all aspects as well. I mean, I remember as a kid watching Lightning McQueen. Cars was my thing. You know, you could ask me any show, Cars was the thing I wanted. And when we reached out to you, I was just so fascinated that you were a race car driver. Yeah. Like, it's a dream as a kid to be like, yo, I want to race a car. But for you to actually do it, that's a whole nother thing. And I commend your, discipline and consistency towards that, first of all.
Thank you.
I want to ask you about, like, the technicalities of NASCAR, because we weren't too familiar about it until yesterday. But can you talk about how exactly NASCAR works? And I know you started on dirt as well, so how that transition works.
Yeah, definitely. So NASCAR, like many other sports leagues, has quite a few different layers to it. So we have the NASCAR Cup Series, which is the top series of NASCAR that you see on Sundays on TV. Then there's the NASCAR Xfinity Series, NASCAR Truck Series, and then also the NASCAR ARCA Series. And then underneath that is the NASCAR Wheel and All-American Series. So that's more of a regional series. That's the race that I won. My goal is to obviously make it to the Cup Series, but it's a very tough goal. How I like to describe it to people is, there's 40 or so players on an NFL team, right? Or maybe more, 50, 60. Sure. There's only 32 drivers at the top level. Oh. And, in an NFL team, there's however many NFL teams, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players in the NFL. There's only 32 spots in NASCAR at that top level. Wow. And even if you combine all four of the top levels, it's a little under 100 people. So to make it in this sport is like a 0.0001% chance. Like, it's very, very difficult to make it in this sport. So that's why, like, when I said, I'm going to be a NASCAR driver, people like, okay, good one, it's like, but I was like, no, like, I am, like, watch, like, just watch me. And I've had so many people tell me no and laugh in my face, and but I just, like, have this inner drive that almost makes me go more. Like, it's like, if you tell me I can't, it's going to make me want to do it even more. Yeah. So, that's another reason why I've never given up, because I'm just like, no, I need to prove to myself that I can do this and you know, it's nice to prove to everyone else that I can do it too.
What was that like growing up in like a male dominated sport, right? Like, I'm sure that definitely impacted like mental, right? Like, it was very tough to get into it, right? Sure.
I think like what I get at the question a lot to younger girls, like, what's your best advice for a younger girl trying to get into racing?
Right.
And my answer is take gender out of it completely. Like, forget that you're a female and they're males. Like, take it out completely. You're a driver. When you put that helmet on, doesn't matter if you have fake lashes on or lipstick. They can't see that. A car doesn't know gender.
Right.
When you put a helmet on, you're a driver, and focus on being a driver. Focus on, you know, developing your skill set and practicing so that, you know, you have the ability and you can be just as good. I'm so lucky to be in a sport that men and women can compete at the same level.
Right.
Like, there's not many sports like that. So that in itself, I feel so grateful and lucky for. And I've only ever been a female in a male sport, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know any different.
Yeah.
There definitely, you know, when people first see me, they don't really take me seriously until they see my results on the track, till they find out how hard I have to work behind the scenes to even get to the track. That's when the respect comes eventually. But initially, especially too, because I am a feminine girl too. So it's sometimes they don't take me seriously right away. But once they get to know me and see my ability on the track, then the respect starts to come.
NASCAR is also a unique sport in terms of like your practice for it can cost you a lot more money. I know you've talked about this before as well, but like comparing it to like a basketball thing, it's like if you're good, you're talented, you can make it in some of these sports. In NASCAR, not only do you have to be talented and like good at driving, you also need to have the financial backing. So what's that like for you?
So that's been my absolute biggest struggle in my career, is having the financial backing. I'd say 95% of the people that I race against come from very wealthy families. So their parents are able to write these checks to practice, you know, spend a couple $100,000 just practicing, not even racing. And then there's me that has to find sponsors to be on the track. Well, sponsors don't get any value out of me practicing. They get value of me being on TV and, you know, so I don't get to practice as much. So that means every opportunity I get, every race, I have to make it count.
That's amazing. Like, is that what pushes you to be like the best on the track? Like, hey, I come from nothing and this is my moment. Like, this is what I live for. What is that like for you?
Yeah, that it's, again, just to show people, like, it doesn't matter where you come from. If you have them and you don't, it does color your skin, gender, nothing, none of it matters.
Yeah.
It's all about work ethic. And I know that I work harder in the gym than 90, maybe even 100% of my competitors. Like, I know my nutrition's on point. I know, like, I'm doing everything I can outside of the track to make sure that I'm ready when I'm at the track.
Is that pressure at all for you to think that this day or this race is what determines how I do versus like another sport where you get your reps in consistently?
There is a little bit of added pressure, but the biggest pressure really comes from the financial backing. Like, as long as I have partners that are willing to stick with me and, you know that I'm doing everything I can to make this successful, then that's what makes it great. I mean, I'm now thankful that I have really, really great marketing partners with me and great sponsors with me. And some sponsors, you know, they're more worried about track results, and other sponsors are more worried about how you represent them. You know, you really do have to do both and be the full package. But luckily, I don't feel the results pressure as much from my sponsors. It's more just like, we need you to do all these things and market us and really help us on the business side. So I've become a businesswoman because of this sport. But me as a driver and an athlete, I want to win more than anything. So I put more pressure on myself to win and do well than anyone else does around me.
What's that behind the scenes looking like? I'm sure you're crazy hours, right? Just trying to figure out how I'm going to market the race or what's coming next. Like, what is the behind the scenes to the NASCAR looking like?
Yeah, it's pretty funny because a lot of times people are like, well, you race on weekends, so like, what do you do all day? Like, I'm like, if you only knew. But it's a lot of like outreaching to sponsors, and keeping those relationships. And I'm like working almost as an employee for these sponsors. So like reaching out to dealerships and getting point of purchase displays into different stores, doing, like, I have 3 trade shows in January that I'm going to for my sponsors, speaking engagements, podcasts, like interviews, training. Then I have this thing called iRacing as well, which is that's kind of how I practice without being in the car, but it's kind of like a video game, but it's exact replica of all
Replica.
Thank you of all the tracks. So that's another way that we can train without having to spend a bunch of money. But every day is kind of different for me. It just depends. It's a lot of traveling. But I love it. I love it.
Is that the way the NASCAR industry works, like business wise? Is there a certain, like, you have to pay to get into these races? Or what do the sponsors provide that really helps you? Because you see all these NASCARs and even your suit as well. Like, you have, your icon and all these people, you watch music videos or whatever, they're tatted up in sponsors on their jersey. So
I like that. Tatted up with sponsors. I like that.
So why is that? Like, what do the sponsors provide that the NASCAR drivers need?
So to race NASCAR, it's just an extremely expensive sport. So you think of the tires, the fuel, the cars, the engines, the upkeep of the, taking the cars apart every week and putting them back together, all the employees. There's tons of employees. There's 8 guys working on my car every day. There's the travel, the travel haulers, the trucks and trailer. Like, there's so much that goes into it. The technology and the engineering in it is absolutely insane. Like, when I work with my crew chiefs, I'm like, they're so smart. Like, they're so smart. Like, because they need to know if I adjust this here, it affects this. And they're just so intelligent, and even that's inspiring to work with. But so the sponsors, essentially, their funding goes to all of that, all the costs of racing. And there's a lot of different things that sponsors look for. Some people just love having their logo on the car, but some people don't care about having their logo on the car. They care about me going to their company events and speaking to their employees and, pushing out to different sales and, the activation side of the sport, having hospitality events at the track. Like, there's so many different ways that we can provide value for sponsors, which is great because it makes my job a little bit more exciting as far as selling sponsors. Like, even social media now is huge. So now I work with marketing teams to create social media campaigns through my social media, how we're going to integrate my racing into their marketing plan. So again, it's honestly like 90% business and 10% the fun stuff, getting to be on the racetrack and going fast.
Where do you find that balance though? Like, I mean, you're working 10 to 15 hours a day, and then you get that little time for yourself, right? Like, I'm sure there's crazy pressure for marketing on that stuff, and then one day you're just out there racing, like you're living the dream. What is that like for you?
I think like the being on the track, that's the reward of it all. Like that's the reward. It makes all the hard work worth it. And I do enjoy the business side as well. Right. Like, I did take business in school, and I think I really like business. And the nice thing is I kind of technically still work for myself. So I make my own hours. I work when I can, and, I can travel when I want. I was able to come back to Winnipeg for holidays and everything. So even though you got to work hard, I like that I'm in control of when I'm working and how I'm working, and I don't love following rules. I don't love working for someone else. So the fact that I get to kind of, do it my way is, for me, really grateful. I'm really grateful for that.
I was just wondering, just a question, what is the balance between like finding sponsors and then versus having your own brand? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm very clear on what my brand is, and when I do partner with companies, I really make sure that our brands align, because if they don't, then it's not going to work. It's not a good fit, and that's why, like, my main primary sponsor right now, Icon Direct, their RV parts manufacturer. Well, I've been an RV since I was 2 weeks old. I was bathed at the racetrack in an RV. My parents are in Florida right now in their RV. Like, I've grown up in RVs, so it was a natural fit. And their branding is the underdog, the hard worker. They're out of Winkler, Manitoba. Like, our stories of how the CEO grew that business and how I grew my racing completely aligned, and that's why it was just such a good fit. My other sponsor is a trucking company with the same story, just worked really hard to build a business, and I would never partner with a sponsor that didn't have the same values and mission and beliefs that I had.
Okay. I'm curious to see, like, where did that drive come from for being that underdog, like always working, being the hardest worker in the room? Where did you get that mentality from?
You know what? I've thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
And gonna get a little deep here, but I
do
think
it.
a lot of it comes from my dad, because my dad's raced his whole life, but my dad never helped me in racing. He never financially helped me, where a lot of kids that I grew up with, their dad would race, and then when it was time for them to race, their dad would retire and put, their everything into their kid. And my dad said, if you want to race, you got to do it on your own. You got to pay for it. You got to work on the cars. Like, you got to do this. And I think there was times where he questioned my commitment to it, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is all of my commitments into this. So I think a little bit of that was a little bit of, let me show you what I can do on my own. I don't need you to be successful in racing. Like, let me show you what I can do. So I think a little bit of it was that. But then I think I've always just had an inner drive to be successful. And luckily I found my purpose and my passion, which was racing cars. And so the more I achieve, the more I want to achieve too.
Was there ever like a low point where you thought, hey, maybe this couldn't work for me?
More times than not. Like, there were a year, probably 3 to 4 years, where more days I was than not, I was gonna be like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm there's no way I can make this happen. Like, this is done. It's not gonna work.
What brought you back?
I really just couldn't see myself doing anything else, and I was like, I have to make this work. Like, I had really, really low points where I was just so depressed and like couldn't get out of bed and like couldn't believe that, because in 2016 I became the first Canadian female to it, and I was like, after that, oh, my career's gonna blow up, like everything's gonna be great, and like that wasn't the case. Like, I couldn't find sponsors for that next year to move up, and I just couldn't believe it. And so I got into a really low place, and that's when I really started working on my mental toughness. So like, I read self-development books every single day. Every day I read at least 10 pages, and listen to a lot of podcasts, and just really work on my fitness as well. Really helps my mental toughness, and just I really worked on myself. I know that kind of sounds cliche, but I just really worked on myself, and the more I worked on myself, the more things seem to start getting better in my life.
How important is that for like the NASCAR, like racing, right? Like what you're doing on track and versus what you're doing off track, right? Like nutrition, sleep, gym, whatever. How does that impact your performance on the track?
So a lot of people don't realize that NASCAR drivers are athletes.
Yeah.
We, like, someone my size probably lose like 5 to 6 pounds in a race, but like the larger men lose like over 10 pounds in a race because we're sweating that much. Yeah. And like, these races are hours long, and we have to keep that focus for hours long, not only physically, but mentally focused for that long, hitting our exact marks. And like, when I say hitting your marks, like, you have to hit your mark to the like millimeter to make sure that you're keeping that speed and consistency. So it's difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you also got into a crash, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you able to talk about like how that was for you, like, and how you dealt with that?
For sure. So this was in 2020. COVID happened, right?
Right.
So all of my sponsors that I had lined up for the NASCAR season said, we're out, we're done. So I had one sponsor, and it was my sponsor from Winnipeg, the trucking company, and I said, look, like, we don't have the budget to be able to do NASCAR now that these guys aren't helping. Like, what do you think of me going back to dirt track racing, just so at least I can get some laps in and everything? And he's like, yeah, like, if that's what you want to do, I'll support you. And so I went back to dirt track racing, and I raced these cars called midgets. And they are basically a sprint car, but without a wing. They're super light, super fast, open wheel, and anything can happen in a very short amount of time. And it did. I had a vicious flip. When I race sprint cars, it was very common to flip. It wasn't an if, it's when it's going to happen. But this was by far my worst crash ever. I flipped end over end and landed in a fence. I don't remember anything about it. I remember like waking up, hanging in the fence, having safety crew around. I passed out again, woke up again in the ambulance. I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't feel my arms. I thought I was paralyzed. I started freaking out. I'm like, I can't feel anything. And I was like, I'm done. Like, I had just got engaged. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to walk down the aisle at my own wedding. Yeah. Like, my career's over. Like, not only my career, but I'm not going to be able to walk. And, they went to call my fiance. I couldn't remember the password to my phone. Like, I didn't remember his number. Like, I was like, I've had bad crashes, but this was another couldn't stop throwing up for like a week straight, and like obviously a severe concussion and collapsed lungs and burns to my arms, and yeah, it was rough. It was rough. But I think because I went through so much in the years prior, like mentally I was good. I was like, if I went through all this other stuff, like now, like going through this is nothing. Like my body's going to heal. Give it a couple months. We'll get back in the car. We'll be good. But it was the first time I ever said that I was done racing. Like I fully said to my parents and my fiance, I said, I'm done racing. And that lasted one day.
You're back.
Yeah. And then I was back in the car in 2 months. So
What did that recovery process look like? I'm sure not being able to recover for like 2 months, right? Like,
yeah, I think the hardest part was I was so used to waking up, going to the gym every day,
Right.
and just like having to lay in bed and do nothing. And like
exactly.
for someone who's like always busy and always working, and like I like to just do absolutely nothing was hard.
yeah.
But I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and about a month into it, I was able to kind of slowly get back into the gym and stuff. And so it was a little slower recovery process than I expected, but it all worked out. So
Is that scary, like going forward, thinking not only that maybe my health is also could be impacted, but even like on the business side, like people can drop out at any time. Is that scary to think about on both sides?
This probably sounds terrible, but I'm more afraid of losing sponsors than I am crashing.
Yeah.
Like I really am. That sounds bad because health is definitely important,
Sure.
but crashing is just a huge part of our sport, and every driver knows that there's a risk we take when we, buckle up, but for us it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see though, like, where did that come from? Like logistics, right? Like the fear of like, oh, what if this happens? Like, why is it so much reliance on the sponsors as to like, hey, like, why don't you just sign the contract, right? Like, you're here for put that dot on the paper, right? Like, you're here for a couple of months. Like, stick with me. Like,
Yeah, I mean, people have businesses that they have to run, and they
Yeah,
have
they have
budgets, and they
agendas.
have, they have to lay off people. They have to,
Right.
with COVID, so much has changed, so much has happened, and it has to make sense for them for a business standpoint,
Mhm.
and racing's a very unique sport. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't understand, like, where the money goes, how it works, so for them, even, like, there's so many people, Canadian companies I've talked to that sponsor NHL.
yeah.
And they said, well, we've only ever sponsored NHL. Like, it sounds cool what you're doing. We love you. You're awesome. You're great. But like, we just never sponsor NASCAR. We like to stick to NHL. Some people like to stick to what they know. So, and that's fair. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has to run their business their way. So
Yeah.
I get it.
Are you able to say any like numbers, like how much a sponsor would pay you, and then what, like how much you win from a race if you were to
Yeah. So at the level I'm at now, it's over $1 million
to win the race?
No, I wish.
I was like, damn.
No,
I'm in the wrong business, man.
Yeah, I need 7-figure sponsorships
Okay.
to be able to race. The wins are very low compared to
really?
what. Yeah,
Oh,
it
no.
costs more money to race than what we actually win.
Why is that? Why is that?
I wish I knew.
Okay.
I wish I knew. It's just kind of the way the sport goes. I mean, we do win money for sure for racing. And even like if you get last place, you still get winnings.
Okay.
But the cost of it is greater than the winnings.
But I'm sure, like, the winning, like, for example, you win a race, right? Like,
It's all bragging
yeah,
rights.
It's
Yeah.
bragging rights.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
you get
about
that
the bragging
status.
rights.
Champagne going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, what's that feeling? Like, man, you cross that finish line,
Oh.
the flag is waving.
It's the best feeling in the world. Like, that's what we chase. That's why we do it. We go out there to win, and that's my goal this year is just to win as much as I can. Hopefully, go for the championship, get Rookie of the Year, and yeah, we gotta somehow some point in the show announce my 2022 plans.
How about we do that right now?
yeah.
Right now?
She's
Okay.
got some big plans that she wants to
I
share.
gotta
We don't
take
even
some
know,
water.
so we're gonna react to this live as well.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Here we go.
do it,
Drum
let's
roll,
do it.
please. Let's go. I got you.
So for the 2022 race season, I'll be racing a full season in the Arc Menard Series, in the National Arc Menard Series. I'll be going for the national championship.
Yes.
I have got the 7-figure sponsors,
Let's go.
and
Yes.
so thank you Icon Direct, Glenn McLeod and
Let's
Sons,
go.
Hitchweb for coming on board and making this happen. So
Hey.
this is what I've dreamed of my whole life. we start at Daytona. I'm actually testing in Daytona in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then we race at Daytona the day before the Daytona 500 in February.
That
Let's
is
go.
sick.
That's huge.
I'll be racing Talladega. I'll be racing like all the most legendary tracks that I've dreamed of my whole life.
Wow.
So this is the first time I'll be racing at a national NASCAR level. So I'm really pumped.
I mean, like that
that's chill.
that gave me chills. Imagine what you feel right now.
Thank
That's
you.
insane.
Thank you.
That like you're working all life for your money. What is that feeling like? Like, this is my chance.
I just I'm so excited for this year.
Yeah.
Like I'm so excited, and like I've been through so much to get here, and like it's made it all worth it. And I think like anyone listening, like if you're struggling right now, if you're like, how am I gonna get out of this place and get to where I want? It is possible, because I've been in the lowest of lows, and like I've worked 8 years for this moment, 8 years. And yeah, it's taken a long time, but I achieved it. And now I get to go for a national championship and go for wins at Daytona and Talladega. Like this, this is crazy. I'm pumped.
Yeah, those are the names you hear, like Daytona 500. Like, I don't know much about NASCAR, but the little that I do, those are the big stages.
Yeah.
And the lights are going to be on you. Are you ready for that?
I'm definitely
You
ready.
ready?
I've been ready. I've honestly like visualized me racing at Daytona for years. Years. Like I can see it, I can feel it, and like now it's finally happening.
What are your goals going into the Daytona?
The
Win.
season.
Yeah,
The season.
Win.
win. You're gonna
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
I have full faith that I can win at Daytona.
I believe in you. We're gonna do it. Let's go.
Are you a huge person in manifestation as well? 'Cause you just,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
Why and how and
Actually, I'll tell you a story. So, in home in Winnipeg right now for the holidays, and I was in my parents' basement and looking for something, and I found my vision board from 2015. It was my first vision board I had ever
what did it
made.
say?
And I'm with my fiance, and he's looking at it too, and I was like, this year I've accomplished all of this.
That's insane.
And I'm like, and I like get goosebumps because
yeah.
I like it. I mean, 2015, so it took me 7 years to do, but I'm like, holy crap! Like the last thing on it is buy a house, and
Yeah.
that's hopefully coming up this year. So, but yeah, like I had North Carolina on there, I had the ARCA series on there, I had a reality, like my own reality show on there, and I had a reality show a couple of years ago, winning NASCAR. Had that, like I had. It's just crazy what I had on there and what I was able to achieve, and like my fitness goals, like I met my fitness goals, like everything on there. I was like, this is so cool. And I say I make a vision board probably like once a year, like update it. Now I put it as my computer background. Just, I mean, it's easier with technology.
Yeah.
But seeing the one where I like, you're gluing on and copying, I'm like, that's kind of cool. I kind of want to get back to that.
You should frame that.
Yeah.
Put that up in your new house.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm a huge believer in manifestation for sure. And I think like the biggest thing too is just, I had the, what's it called? Destination happiness. Have you heard of that before? When it's like, I can only be happy when I get there.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I had
Right,
that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
had that problem for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and you really have to be thankful and grateful for where you are today, and express gratitude for everything you have in your life, even if it's not much, but we can all find things to be grateful for, and just the fact that we get to live in Canada or the United States, like that alone, we have so much to be grateful for, where we have so much freedom and ability to choose what we do with our lives. And I think that's a one thing. I wake up every day and I'm like, I'm so grateful that I get to wake up and choose to do what I want with this day. And like, that is really cool. Like really, really cool. So, I think being grateful is a huge part of manifestation, and then just visualizing what you want for your life and thinking about that and thinking of it only in a positive way, like law of attraction, you gotta attract what you put out. And, another big thing I think is like jealousy.
Yeah.
Earlier in my career, I'd be really jealous of people that were succeeding, and now I'm pumped for them. Like I'm like, everyone, let's win.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I get pumped up for anyone who has any success now. And, you learn a lot in life, you make mistakes and you learn from them and you keep growing. And, I think you eventually get where you want to go. You just have to learn the lessons along the way to get there.
I mean, everyone likes a good success story, but I believe the biggest lessons are in the mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
So, like, what are the biggest mistakes you've made throughout, like, your career?
Or lessons.
Or lessons that
Yeah.
you've learned, like, top, like, I don't know, just give me one.
Yeah, I
If
think-
I do top 3, but.
I think like being happy for others.
Right.
Being grateful for what's in front of you. I think consistency is a huge thing. Like, and that's with anything. Like, you can work out for like a week straight and be like, oh, I don't see results, I'm done.
Right.
Well, if you work out like 4 times a week for a year straight, you're gonna get the results. So consistency is a huge thing too. And then also another thing is the work doesn't stop. Like, once you achieve one thing, you have to work 2 times harder to get to the next level. I think that was my biggest mistake going into it. Like, when 2016, I was like, okay, I won this race, everything's fine, like my life's easy now. Well, no, that's not how it works. Like, you have to work twice as hard as you did just to get there. And now that I'm here, I know that I have to work twice as hard to get to the next level. Like, you have to keep working harder and harder and harder. It doesn't get easier. You just get smarter and work harder.
Yeah, we preach about that a lot. All of our guests who come on, and us ourselves, consistency, discipline.
Yeah.
Those are the virtues to any success story.
100%.
What would you say would be like I don't want to say challenge. Well, you said the financial was a huge challenge, but anything that specifically had to do with like the racing aspect to it, in terms of learning, even I'm not too familiar with the terminology, but in terms of the car itself, the track itself, what would be the biggest?
Yeah, like, I grew up racing dirt, so I feel like my natural ability is dirt track racing. And pavement and dirt, even though they're both racing, they're 2 completely different worlds, both like as an industry and at being a driver on the track. Like, dirt is very like you go by the feel, and then pavement is very much more like analytical. Like, this is your braking point, your acceleration point, your lifting point. Like, you have to be so exact and so precise, and that's probably been my biggest challenge, and like the consistency of that, because in dirt you can rip the high side in turn 1 and 2 and then go down low in 3 and 4, and then if there's a car in the way, you rip down, slide job. Like, you're all over the track. You're searching for the moisture in the track and the traction, and you're all over, and you're all going by like feel. Where in pavement, it's totally different. There's one line that's fast, and you have to hit that line every single lap for 200 laps and not make any mistakes. If you make a mistake, it takes you 20, 30 laps to get it back. And so I think that's been my biggest struggle, is just like having that consistency and like making sure I'm hitting my marks absolutely perfect every single lap for the entire race. Because again, in dirt, like, I was much more by feel. And pavement, you of course you have to feel what the car's doing, because you have to give the proper feedback to your crew chief so that he can make the proper adjustments on the car to make the car better for you. So that was another big learning curve. When I transitioned from dirt to pavement, was just learning what the car is doing, and learning the feel of, okay, like, this means it's tight, this means it's loose, like, compared to a dirt car, and being able to communicate that with my crew. Because if I don't communicate this stuff properly to my crew, they don't know what to do to make the proper adjustments. And the car is like more than half the battle when winning races. Like, if you don't have a good car and you're the best driver, you won't win a race. Like, the car has to be good. So making sure that I'm really communicating what the car needs, what they can do to the cars, so that I can be faster.
What's that communication looking like? Because, like, I'm an engineer. It's a geek by nerd.
You're an engineer?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Like,
cool.
student engineer. But, like, like, I'm curious to see, like, how are you communicating with your crew members? Like, what are you saying? Like, oh, just traction's low, like the axles. Like,
so I have to explain what the car is doing when I enter the corner, what the car is doing in the center of the corner, and what the car is doing exiting the corner. So, like, how do I put? And then, like, on the straightaways, what's my rev limiter at? Am I hitting the chip? Am I, like, every aspect of the car? I gotta let them know what it's doing. So, let's say I go out there and I do 5 laps. I got to get a feel for what the car's doing. So I could say, the car's tight on entry. So that means I'm putting a lot of wheel into it. It's not wanting to get down to the apex of the center. So once I'm in the center, hitting the apex, does it rotate properly, or is it stiff? Am I rotating, and am I feeling, am I on the right rear? Am I on the right front? Am I on the left rear? Am I on the left front? And then when I exit, is the car pushing? Is it turning down nicely? And then we have terminology for all of this.
Very technical.
Yes, but I have to explain exactly what the car's doing to them, so they know what adjustments to make to the car. Cool. So that's where, like, the engineering part and the science part, all that kind of stuff comes into play.
So like, when do you know to go for like a pit stop?
So that either
That's
you
like
can, you can tell our level of
Yeah.
education.
yeah, no, that's okay. So usually there'll be like your spotter or your crew
Yeah,
chief
yeah.
will come on and say, all right, we'll pit in 2 laps or we'll pit
Okay.
next time by or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and then if there's something wrong with the car, they'll help you out. So the spotter, we rely on the spotter a lot, especially at tracks like Daytona and Talladega because they're so big. On, you know, the cars around us, and then also just kind of like race procedure as well.
Okay, cool. I want to also get into like your social media world because you are pretty big on social media, and you also mentioned you went on a reality TV show.
Yeah.
Was that for the sense of getting your name out there so you could attract more sponsors? Was that the
Yeah.
main goal?
Yeah, definitely. So social media for me started like when I was younger because I was like, all right, I'm a Winnipeg girl, but I want to be racing in the States where all the best drivers are. So how do I get there? And how do I get them to notice me? So I started making YouTube videos. I started really pushing myself on Facebook and Instagram because I'm like, I need all of the people in the States to know that I'm winning races here in Winnipeg, you know? And it worked, you know, they did see it. And so I really pushed that a lot. And then with the reality show, when we started the reality show, I didn't have any sponsors. So I'm like, all right, this will really help bring more exposure and more eyes on me to help bring sponsors. And it didn't work. It really did. Like, I thought after the reality show, oh, this is going to be easy. Like, every time I think something's going to be easy, I cannot be more wrong. Yeah. Definitely have learned that. I think I was a little naive going into all of this. But in a way, I'm happy I was because I was overly optimistic.
Right.
But I definitely learned my lessons and now understand how difficult it is. So I'm not as naive anymore, but, you know, ignorance is bliss, I guess.
Hey, yo, we interrupt this episode to bring you today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of classes in design, business, tech, and more. Anyone can join the millions of the members in the community to learn cutting-edge skills, network with peers, and discover new opportunities. If you'd like to support our show and are interested in Skillshare, click the first affiliate link in our description to get your 14-day free trial on us. It's quick, easy, and you can cancel it anytime. Now back to the episode.
I'm just curious, like, have you got like speeding tickets here? Really?
I paid for half the roads in Winnipeg.
She's the one keeping me employed, right?
Even with
No.
the potholes?
Yeah, no, but seriously, I lost my license for 3 months because I had like
Oh,
7
shit.
speeding tickets when I first started. And when I won that first NASCAR race, Mayor Bowman gave me an award.
Right.
And I was like sitting was sitting in his office with him, and I was like, he's like, all right, Amber, like no speeding. I'm like, you know, I've paid for like half the roads in Winnipeg with how many speeding tickets I've gotten. He's like, yeah, well, let's keep it down.
That's hilarious.
Damn. Do you drive the same? I assume not, but do you drive the same way on the road as the
On the
track?
track?
Or do you
No.
practice? Is that your practice?
Well, no, okay, so this is the issue, is, like, my fiance thinks I'm a terrible driver like, on the street. Like,
Bro,
he,
she's
like,
a professional
I know,
driver.
but he will not drive with me. Like, he's
Yeah.
like, I'm driving, like, I will not drive with you. And I think this is why. Because when I'm in the race car, I'm so tunnel vision focused, right,
Yeah.
on what I'm doing. When I'm in a regular car, I'm like, la da da da. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not in a race car, so I don't have to, like, focus as much, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not as focused as I am in a race car. So I think, you know, that's where his issue is.
But man, I'll be like, yo, I'll be swerving in and out of traffic. Like, you're used to that at
Yeah.
this point, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's sick.
What's the road rage like on the track? I assume. Like, is there road rage? It's like, yo, you cut me off.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you flipping each other off?
Yeah, there's definitely still road rage. It's more like if someone's just in your way and way slower than you and they're not
Yeah.
moving over, you're like,
Okay.
come on, like, you know, I'm way faster, you know, like,
I'll beat
but
you, no problem.
and then there's people who are faster than you that just knock you out of the way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it happens.
Wait, are you allowed to like touch or crash or what's the terminology? Is there a terminology? for
Yeah,
that?
I mean, rubbin's racing.
Okay. So, but then you have to like pay for like dents. Like, what's the MPI insurance looking like? There's no insurance, right?
There's no
Oh,
insurance,
okay,
yeah.
That's what I figured.
No, I love that question too. Like, what kind of insurance do you have on a race car? Like, yeah, we don't got insurance.
What's your demerits looking like?
Yeah.
That's funny, man. But
Yeah,
like,
but now I haven't lived in Winnipeg for 5 years, so I
That's
haven't
all
got any speeding tickets here. So now my license is going
Like
back
going
up.
up?
Yeah, and I watch my speed here and everything. So
yeah, that's sick, man. Like, I mean, man, my initial like if I was a race car driver, my initial attention would be like, yo, it's snow. I'm going to drift all over the place.
Yeah.
You know? That's sick. I don't know.
We interrupt this episode to bring you another sponsor. If you've ever considered building a website, you've probably definitely heard of Squarespace. Squarespace is an online web designer that allows you to create your website from scratch using a wide range of templates. If you want to build an e-commerce site, a small business, Squarespace got it all. Click the affiliate link in our description to start building your website today. You'll be helping out the show and also creating a killer website to flex on your peers. Now back to the episode.
All right. Before the break there, I asked you, what is it like being on a reality TV show, right? Like, I mean, I see it. For example, like the biggest thing right now, reality TV show, Too Hot to Handle. Like, I would love to be on that, right? Yeah. But
So
what is it like?
It's a lot of fun, but it's also very stressful because, like, the thing with social media is you get to choose what you put out there and how you're portrayed.
Right.
When you're on a reality show, you don't. Like, they can portray you however you want, and they can make you do things, and they're sneaky about things that it will make certain situations look one way when that wasn't like how the way it was, and or leave out certain context that makes it seem so filming is really fun for sure. Like, I really enjoyed filming. I really enjoyed like working with all the girls that I got to film with. And, like, I got to experience things that I would have never got to experience before. Like, I got to go on, like, Kyle Busch's private jet. Like, I'd never been on a private jet before, you know? Like, just little things like that so the show was called Racing Wives. So it was all the NASCAR drivers' wives, but, like, at the top series. So they're all very wealthy and live very extravagant lives. And then there was me driving like a $2,500 car and like had never been on a private plane and like never like been to these type of events. And so like it was cool because I got to see all of that. But I definitely was like felt like an outsider because like I haven't accumulated that type of wealth or anything like that or success. But I got to work with Kyle Busch. You know, I got to race for Kyle Busch. And if you guys don't know who Kyle Busch is, he's like a NASCAR champion and one of the biggest names in NASCAR and extremely, extremely talented. So the fact that like I got to be coached by him and drive for him was like amazing. It was really, truly amazing. So I got to experience tons of good things. I'm definitely glad I did it. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. And like, I don't know if you guys watch The Bachelor or Bachelorette, but like they say like, oh, I learned so much during this journey. Like, like you do because, and then watching yourself back, like you see things about yourself and like, you're like, oh, and it like, when I watched it air, like I cringed at everything because I'm like, I'm not that person anymore. Like that's not who I am anymore. And I watched it back and I'm like, I just seem so like insecure and like now I'm so much more confident and like the way I handled situations then I would handle them way differently now. And like I was such a people pleaser before and like I would, you know, and I'm not like that anymore. And now I'm just much more like confident of who I am as a person. And so I think the weirdest part is watching it back and like knowing how much you've grown as a person since then and be like, oh, I hate that people see me that way. But it definitely teaches you not to care what people think. That's for sure. Because, people are mean on the internet. Mean. So, it definitely gave me thicker skin and realized that like, don't let the opinions of others dictate, you know, the decisions you make for yourself or the opinions you have on yourself. Like no one knows you better than yourself. So as long as you know who you are and you like that person, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if people like you or not.
Would you do it again?
I would, because like knowing what I know now, I would do it again. Because there's things now that I would be like, no, I'm not doing that. Where like before I was like, well, I need this right now, you know, like I need this show. I need like, and so I'm in a place now where I would be like, no, I'm not doing that, you know, where before I wouldn't be like that. So knowing what I know now, I would do it again for sure.
I mean, they also manipulate like everything you do, right? Like every situation.
But you're not really aware of it at the time. And so that's why I'm like, now I know what to look for and like what to, and see how they can finesse things. So now knowing kind of how it all works, I think I would be better. But it's still like, and like everyone just knows everything about you, which is kind of weird, right? Like, I
don't know. We do live in a social world, but you know, how social do you want to put yourself out there?
Exactly.
That's I've never I can't say I've ever desired to be on a reality TV show, nor have I met anyone, but you know, It's a cool experience, I guess.
It was cool.
Did you get what you wanted out of it in terms of your racing?
No, I really thought it was going to help bring sponsorship, and it really didn't. I just had to keep grinding and on the business side of things to get the partnerships.
Just like different audience or like?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I guess so. Yeah, I guess it'd be the audience.
Sure.
I mean, you do have this all like entrepreneur side to you. You have your own brand, right? Where did that start?
When did that? I feel like it just started when I raced mini sprints.
Mm-hmm.
So when I raced mini sprints, I was like, all right, if I'm gonna do this, I really gotta pump this up. And that's when I really started being active on social media. And I think my brand has changed a little bit throughout the last 10 years, but it's stayed pretty consistent. There's something like now I'm definitely more towards the underdog side of things. And where before, like when I raced mini sprints locally at this track, my dad had raced there. So people didn't really view me as an underdog because they're like, well, that's Mike's daughter, where like now it's like nobody knows who I am in NASCAR. So now I'm the true underdog. Yeah. So
is there a way that you can, your brand could like outlive your sponsors in terms of your brand makes more money or you get the money that you want from just your brand versus having to go to the sponsors?
No? I don't think so. I need I cannot race without sponsors. Like it can't happen. Mm-hmm. I need sponsors to race, and that's why I'm so grateful for them. And I tell them that all the time. I couldn't be living this dream without sponsors.
Okay.
Do you like being the underdog? Always yo, let me show you.
I love being underestimated. I love it. I love when people look at me and I can tell they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, all right, watch me. I love it. I think it's the best. And I don't know. I think being underestimated is a good thing. I think being the underdog is a good thing because people have lower expectations of you, and that just makes me want to work harder. Right. So,
wow. All right. What is some I want to ask what's some advice you could give to that young entrepreneur out there who's starting or even wants to get into NASCAR racing? What are some piece of advice you can give to them?
I think it's just don't ever give up. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but it's really don't give up, because this is the thing is all the years of experience, you accumulate so many skills and you're constantly building on those skills, and you learn so much that you're only moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like you're moving forward. I was essentially at a standstill for 3 to 4 years, but I learned so much, and all that work, all those seeds that I planted now are what my dream is today. And it can seem like nothing's happening for a very, very long time, but just keep going, because it does eventually get there. And my favorite picture that has been on social media is the picture of a guy mining, and it has two images. And the first one, the image is you see the diamonds, and he was this close, and he walked away. And the second one was if he just went a little further. Right. And every time I wanted to give up, I'd think about that image and be like, Amber, what if you're this close? What if you're this close? You're really going to give up now after 15, 16, 17 years of working for this? You're going to give up now? For what? Exactly. It just, you have to keep going. Even if you can't see the light, even if you're I don't know how this is going to work, I don't know how I'm going to be successful. You don't need to know the how, you need to know the why, and you need to be dedicated and consistent and just keep being disciplined and keep pushing, because you do eventually get there. It takes time, and it takes learning those hard lessons. But the thing is even now people are well, what are you going to do after racing? I'm the what I've learned through racing and through business, the skills I've accumulated, I feel now I can go and start my own business and do whatever, because I've learned so much doing this. It's not going to be a waste of time, you know? And you have to think like that too as an entrepreneur. Everything that you learn, none of it's going to be a waste of time, because you've accumulated all these new skills that you didn't have before, and you can apply those to so many areas of life. So I hope that answered the question.
That was amazing. Keep pushing, keep grinding, and most importantly, keep rising. I'm thinking this is the best way to end off the podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, listen, even give us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're listening there. Make sure to check out Amber. Keep an eye out for her on the track. She's going to be racing. She's going to kill it. Support her.
Can I do a social media plug?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sure. All right. My Instagram and Twitter is at Amber Balcaen 10, AMBERBALCAEN 10. Facebook, Amber Balcaen Racing. Shout out to my sponsors, Icon Direct. If you need RV parts, make sure you go to icondirect.com, and Glenn McLeod and Sons Trucking too.
All linked in the description below.
Yeah, everything's in the description below. We're live every Tuesday morning at 11:30 a.m. on the UMFM radio station, 101.5 FM. And until next time, peace.
Thank you
so
guys for having me on.
Thank you. No, appreciate it. That's a wrap.
That was
Wow.
fun.